Hello you guys, it is me, it is I. Hi! As you can see, I have no makeup on, so I apologize for not having any makeup on. But today we're going to go on a little reading vlog trip together, okay? If you guys watched my last video, it's technically part one where I let the Goodreads Choice Awards pick my TBR. Now I'm going to actually read that TBR, and I want to read it before they announce the final winners on December 5th. So this should be coming out a day before, okay? So I picked out a few books that I wanted to read. So among those included Assistant to the Villain, that way I could get to Apprentice to the Villain. It included Five Broken Blades. It included I'm Sorry for My Loss, which is the nonfiction, one of the nonfiction picks there. And then for horror, it included So Thirsty by Rachel Harrison. It also included We Used to Live Here by Marcus Cleaver. And then it also, lastly but certainly not least, for the romance category, it was The Love of My Afterlife. And then for the YA pick, YA romance, or the YA fiction, it was Heartstopper Volume 5. I didn't read all of those because I didn't have enough time, but I did read 4 of those books that I had selected. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started on each of these books. Yay! Hello everyone, I wanted to give my very first update for Phantasma. I am currently around 40 pages in. You guys, I have not been obsessed with a book like this since probably like Fourth Wing. I don't know what it is. There's something in this book. This book is laced with something because literally I love it. I love that the fact that it takes place in New Orleans, number one. It takes place in New Orleans. I effing love New Orleans. I love New Orleans. I've been there. It just feels so magical. The fact that they're necromancers. I have never come across a book in my 30 plus years of living that has a main character that's a necromancer, as far as I remember anyways. So that's pretty freaking awesome. And then not only that, but like our main character, she literally has this like voice in her head, almost like she has schizophrenia or something, that like tells her to do something or else something terrible will happen. And I love that she has that because that's very relevant to me as a kid. I had that like voice in my head that I felt like I had to listen to that would make me do awful things, or else I felt like something horrible was going to happen. Literally, I had a voice that haunted me like that for years when I was a kid, and it didn't go away till I was like 13. So this book is great. Like right off the start, it's like it starts with a bang. It's just like, oh, it's so good. I am giving you guys an update on Phantasma because I am now 150 pages in. I do have a really bad kidney infection, so I am pretty much bedridden. This book is so good. So basically what is happening now, I can't remember what was happening when I last updated you, but now our main character Ophelia is officially in Phantasma, and what I think is really freaking awesome is that Phantasma is this haunted house, and once you win, you can make a deal with like a devil, and he basically grants you whatever you want. And Ophelia doesn't necessarily want to win. She just wants to find her sister Genevieve. And so she's like, I don't care if I win. I just want to find my sister Genevieve. The only thing is that everybody is like separated up until level 7. Once you get to level 7, then you can see the other groups and who else is involved. And so she has to wait to make it to at least level 7 till she can go find her sister. And she doesn't for sure know that her sister is there. However, there is a lot of hints that her sister would be there because her sister was obsessed with it. She would write about it. She would collect a whole bunch of things whenever Phantasma would come to town. And then now, like, her whole family, her house is like up for sale, like they're about to lose everything. So it makes sense that Genevieve would possibly go to Phantasma. So now Ophelia's there, and then she meets Phantom named Blackwell, who is like, hey, I'll help you out, but I need 10 years of your life. Like, make this deal with me, and then I will help you win Phantasma. Like, most of the people that I made deals with have won Phantasma. And she's like, and then he's like, and I won't necessarily take 10 years of your life. Help me find what I need, and then I won't take those 10 years. But if you don't help me find what those, what I need, then I will take your 10 years. But you at least still get to win Phantasma. She refuses to offer at first. And so now she goes to the first game that they're playing, and it looks like each game that they play, because I don't know if you guys know, like, Dante's Inferno and all that stuff, but supposedly there's like 9 levels of hell. And so each game is based off of one of the 9 levels of hell. So the first level is like pitch black. They can't hear anything. It's just see anything. It's just this void. And so she's like thinking back, and she's like, okay, which level of hell is this? To try and figure out clues of how she can beat this specific level. So I thought that was really cool and like really unique. You know, once in a while a book comes and just shakes you, and this book has definitely shook me. It's giving me, I don't know what it is. Like, I am absolutely obsessed with this book, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's because like it's like the right tropes in the right places. I don't know if it's because it's things that I just love, like enemies to lovers. We have Victorian-esque vibes. We have like phantoms and fantasy and like devils and witches and necromancers, and I don't know what it is, but there is something that I'm just absolutely obsessed with. Like, I'm obsessed with this. It's so good. It's just so good. And I also think, like, you know what else it can be is like, it gives me, do you guys remember Van Helsing, that movie with like Hugh Jackman? And I forgot what that girl's name was. Oh my gosh, I was in love with this girl. Like, I was literally, like, I was obsessed with her. Anyways, so it reminds me of that. But do you remember when the princess was, like, shacking it up? Like, Dracula wanted her as one of his wives, and she refused his offer, but you kind of, like, wanted them together low-key. I feel like this book gives me those vibes. If the princess and Dracula had gotten together, what would have happened? That's the vibes that I'm getting. So it's good. It's so good. I'm reading Phantasma. You guys may know that. Okay, I'm on page 460. I had so many theories going into this book, and I was right. I have so many emotions right now. I don't even know what's happening. There's so many things that I want to say, but without like spoiling anything, I just don't know what to say. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? I finished this last night. Am I okay? No. No, I'm not okay. I could not, for the life of me, put it down. When I put it down, I was thinking about it. Let's just get into it. In this book, we are following our main character, Ophelia. And Ophelia, right off the bat, she starts off with her mother passing away. And I think I already talked about this. And so basically, one night she ends up getting in an argument with her sister Genevieve, and Genevieve leaves. She wakes up, Ophelia wakes up, and she finds that Genevieve is gone. And Genevieve just leaves a note that says, I have to find Gabriel. And then she sees Phantasma, which is this manor where there's like a deadly competition that is happening right now. So she's like, I have to go find my sister in Phantasma. So Ophelia goes to Phantasma and she joins this competition, trying to find her sister. However, the thing is, once you enter Phantasma, you're like with a group of people You cannot go around the rest of the house and discover the other groups up until level 7. So, until level 7 happens, Ophelia has no choice but to stay in the mansion and overcome every single level to see if her sister is even in there. But Phantasma is very, very dangerous. Every trial can kill you. You give up your worst fear to the manor when you enter it, and they can turn around and use that worst fear against you anytime they want to. But if you win Phantasma and you get to level 9, you win Phantasma, there can only be one winner, then you get a wish, not a wish granted by the devil, but you get to like make a deal with the devil, and he will grant you whatever you want like beyond your wildest dreams. And so we follow Ophelia as she gets into Phantasma, and she meets this phantom. And this phantom is like, there's something very different about you, I can tell. And she's like, yes, I'm a necromancer. And so he decides to make a deal with Ophelia and he tells her, I can get you to your sister by level 7. I can make sure you even win this Phantasma if you make a deal with me. I need you to help me free myself from here. Because I guess he's like stuck in this manor because he's a phantom, so he's attached to the manor, like most of the ghosts are. If she helps free him, then she's not indebted to him. But if she doesn't help free him, then he takes 10 years of her life. And at first Ophelia resists, but pretty soon she decides she does need him, and she does make this deal. And that's not a spoiler. The most dangerous thing in this manor is not entering the competition, but falling in love in the competition. And obviously, this being a romance, a dark fantasy romance, a romance does ensue. This book, how do I say this? This book had me in a chokehold. Like the ending of every chapter was like cliffhanger after cliffhanger after cliffhanger. There was jaw-dropping moment after jaw-dropping moment after jaw-dropping moment, and I was so glued to these pages. It was insane. Our main character, Ophelia, is such a badass character. I loved her so effing much. Like when it started off, I was like, okay, she's a little grumpy. But the more I got to know her, the more that I realized this FMC is my favorite kind of FMC out there. And she's very, very rare, which is a morally gray FMC. Usually we get a lot of good main characters and like, oh, could never kill someone. I could never do this because it's beyond my moral code. Me. Ophelia does not give no fudges certain things, okay? She does not care. She's like, no, you gotta look after number 1. I have, like, this is my duty, okay? This is my focus. My focus is my sister, and I don't give a shiznit who else is gonna try to come at me. Come at me, bro, because my focus is that. I don't give a cahoots if I have to off you. She's just so badass. I effing love her. And I unlocked a new kink I didn't know that I had, which is like alpha female, when the female's in charge, especially in the bedroom. I didn't know that I had this kink, but apparently I do because this book unlocked it. Alpha male, alpha female. Yeah. It was so good. It was so good. It was so good, but the thing is, I tapped so much. She gave so many clues throughout this whole story where I was like, this is a theory, I have a theory, I have a theory, I have a theory, I have a theory. This book was just so thought out, and it turned out one of my biggest theories was correct. It was correct, and I was like, I knew it. I effing knew this was happening, and I was right. But even after I knew I was right, it still was a jaw-dropping moment, if that makes any sense. Even though I put it together, and maybe some people didn't put it together, I knew it. Apparently my friend didn't put it together, but I was like, no, this is gonna happen. I know this is gonna happen, and sure enough, I was right. It still did not take away from that jaw-dropping moment that I was like, oh my goddess. I couldn't believe it. So it just did not take away from that. The only complaint that I have about this book is the ending, because there's so many There's so many things that you can add to Ophelia and Blackwell's story. There's so many loose ends. They have not been tied up. There are so many questions that you still have going through your mind. So when the book ended, and it ended, I was expecting what I was getting at the end of every single chapter. I was expecting a cliffhanger ending. I was expecting a jaw-dropping moment. I was expecting something grand. And so the ending was very much like wrapped up in a little pretty bow, and like, this is the ending, and it felt like an ending. But I didn't like that because and I'm like, how can you end the book like that? How can you, it just made it seem like they weren't going to continue with their story. And sure enough, the second one is focusing on the sister. And I'm like, why are you shifting gears and focusing on Genevieve when there are still so many questions that are left unanswered when it comes to Ophelia and Blackwell? I don't know, like, why are there's so many things that are still left unsaid with these two characters. Why are you gonna move on to that? Can they explore certain things because it still involves the same family? Yes, but there are still other things that are specific to Ophelia and Blackwell that we're not gonna be able to see if we're following Genevieve. I'm very disappointed that we're following Genevieve because I got so attached to Ophelia that even though Genevieve was cool, whatever, she's not Ophelia. This has probably quickly made its way to being my second favorite book of all time. The first one being Fourth Wing, obviously. This is number 2. I loved it that much. Yes, I'm serious. I loved it that effing much. So good. Hated the ending. Was very disappointed in the ending, but the rest of the book just did not disappoint. It was just so effing good. Everything was perfect. Ophelia, the main character, is probably one of my favorite FMCs after Selena Sardothian from Third of Glass. I loved her. I loved her so much. So that's Phantasma. Hey guys, so it is like midnight and we just finished season 2 of Arcane. For those of you that have not watched it and want to, just know that your heart's going to be smashed to pieces, obliterated. Goodness, that show is not for the faint of heart. Soft-hearted. Anyways, I finished this. I finished Heartstopper Volume 5. So, this is second book into the vlog. And I really liked this one. Because, the thing is, the first 3 volumes of Heartstopper, I feel like were a little bit more lighthearted. Because you see Nick and Charlie's relationship progress. And it's cute. And it's adorable. And I feel like the author did a really good job at forming that bond over the first 3 books so that we fall in love with these characters and their relationship. And then once we get to the 4th book, we start to see a little bit more deeper and we start getting into darker topics. So trigger warnings for volume 4 and then volume 5, we deal with very, what's the word I'm looking for? Coming of age things. These are 2 teenage boys and one of them's about to enter college, so you see the struggle of him falling in love with a college that's far away from the boy that he loves. You see the struggle of taking things to the next level in a relationship, and it was so good. Like, I really enjoyed it. Apparently the 6th volume is going to be the last one. But I really did like this a lot. I like how we also explored I like how Alice Oseman goes over different types of sexuality. So I thought that was really awesome. I feel like the cast is very diverse, and I like that. So I really enjoyed this one a lot, and again, still very, like, a very cozy read, and I needed that after all that darkness from Arcane. But anyways, let's move on to the next one. So, what good news and bad news? Good news is that I am reading So Thirsty by Rachel Harrison, and I am now 186 pages in, so I'm more than halfway through. And bad news is that I realized that this didn't get to the final round in the Goodreads Choice Awards, which I shouldn't have been surprised because the ratings for this was very low. This is my first Rachel Harrison book, and to be honest, I really like it, okay? We are following two friends, and one of them is, like, getting older, and I feel like it's very relevant if you are, like, over your 30s. This is, like, a very relevant book because you feel like you're getting older and you're constantly looking at yourself and you're wondering, like, how much time you have before you're, like, consider, like, oh my gosh, I'm too old, blah, 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 blah. Our main character has those thoughts, you know, that I relate to. And so I really enjoy that aspect. Her husband is a POS, meaning piece of, and he basically pays for her and her best friend to go on this trip. And once they do, they end up getting into a organizational place, and they end up becoming vampires that night, and they're trying to figure out how to survive as a vampire, and they suddenly become so thirsty and they end up, like, you know, having to quench their thirst. There is toxic friendships in this. There is relevant aging women and so far so good. Like, I'm actually really liking this. I don't understand why people are hating on this so hard, because it's not that bad. I feel like maybe if you're, like, younger, you don't, like, get it yet, you know what I mean? But, like, I feel like if you're in your 30s or older, this might be a little bit more relevant to you. Hi, you guys. I'm back with a book review on So Thirsty by Rachel Harrison. So this book was actually a very quick read. I finished this fairly quickly. So this story, we are following two girls, and we follow our main character who's in her late 30s, I believe. She's around, like, 38, and she just doesn't feel the same as she used to. She feels like she's definitely getting older. She feels like she's getting older. She doesn't get the same looks that she used to, and she just starts to feel just old, you know what I mean? And then she has a husband that she is not very close to specifically because he constantly cheats on her. She just is such a people pleaser, and she doesn't know how to give up on him. So she decides to just stay with him, and he eventually pays for her and her best friend to go on a little, like, girls trip. And so she takes her best friend, who's a little bit toxic, you know, she's like the free spirit, the one that, like, travels the world and is, like, on and off with her boyfriend. And, you know, she's like, she does this thing for, like, this, like, I think it's like a rock band or some sort of band. And so she's, like, the free-spirited one. And so they go to this place together, and then they end up getting hit on at this bar that leads them to going into this beautiful, huge, like, mansion, castle-like structure. And then there's a whole organizational place. You know what I'm talking about? Why? That place. That whole thing's going on. And then it turns out that they're vampires. And they turn them into vampires. And so now she's living with having to be a vampire with this friend, this best friend, who's very unpredictable, who keeps doing things that she's not supposed to, and now she has to deal with the consequences because she's not going to leave her best friend behind. And now she has the, you know, she's immortal. So I really liked this book, because I didn't really like this book. I related to this book. I related to the main character. I related to her existential dread, because that is something, like, even though I'm not in my late 30s, I'm already facing that. I already feel like I'm already feeling those feelings, you know what I mean? Like, oh my gosh, like, I'm getting older. What am I gonna do now? You know what I mean? And just like feeling like I don't have that much time left, and what am I doing with my life? And you know, all those questions, like, I really felt that deeply in my soul. So having understood the character, I really enjoyed that aspect of it, and looking into those thoughts, because those are thoughts that, like, maybe if you're in your early 20s or maybe you're in your teen years, you're not going to really necessarily relate to that. But once you hit like 30, I want to say, is like when you start questioning that, which, yes, again, like, I'm barely hitting my 30s, but still, you know what I mean? Like, so there's that. The only thing is that I found the characters a little bit annoying. Like, I found the main character very annoying. Like, I understand she's like a people pleaser and she doesn't know how to say no to people, especially people that she cares about, even though she knows that they're toxic. But it got a little bit irritating. The main character got a little bit irritating. The best friend got a little bit irritating. And because of that, I didn't enjoy this as much as I wanted to. So I ended up giving this one a 3.5 star. Definitely wasn't horrible, but it wasn't like the best book ever. So this is not a read that I ever plan on rereading in the future, but I did still enjoy it. You know, it's still like, okay, this is okay, this is cute, but at the same time, like, it's not something that's like over the top. This was amazing, this was great. It was meh. It was palatable, it was enjoyable, but it wasn't an amazing, blown away read, if that makes any sense. So that's So Thirsty. Yay! So I'm reading this, and I'm currently 77 pages in, and to be honest with you guys, I really like it. Okay, it's been a while since I read like a typical romance, and I guess this isn't like a typical romance, but you know what I mean? It's like more fluffy and like light, and I'm really having a great time. So in this one, we're following our main character. Her name is Delphi. And Delphi basically lives her life alone. Like, she doesn't like to be around other people. She just likes to spend her time alone. And so one day she's eating and she starts choking on a hamburger. And she ends up dying, and she ends up waking up in this like afterlife living room waiting area where she has like this like therapist or something like that, like this afterlife therapist or whoever it is. And she basically, the therapist shows her like, oh, we're gonna show you like a little life review. Like, we don't normally offer this before, but now a lot of people ask for it, so we offer it to people now. And she looks back at Delphi's life, and Delphi has had like a pretty boring life. Her biggest thing that happened to her was like growing up. She had like this best friend, and then all of a sudden in high school, her best friend just like turned on her and started making fun of her. And then so after that, like, Delphi just kind of separated herself from people, and then every day just sort of melted into one another. And then the therapist was like, you never had anything, like, not a boyfriend? She's like, no, I've never had a boyfriend. I've never been intimate. Like, I don't need that to sustain me. And so the therapist is like, okay, your life seems like, I feel bad for you, but now you're stuck here, you know, because this is the afterlife. And so Delphi leaves the waiting room, and she bumps like face first into this man that she automatically, like, she has this like vibe with him, this chemistry, this connection with him. And they start talking, and Delphi's usually really shy, but with this man, she notices that she's not shy. She just feels connected to him, and he feels connected to her too. He even like grabs her hand and everything. And that's when the therapist like breaks in, and she's like, oh, Jonah, you're not supposed to be here. Like, we accidentally got you mistaken. You're not supposed to die yet. So she like taps him in the forehead, and he gets sent back. And then Delphi's like, what the heck? And then she's like, oh, the therapist is like, oh, that was one of your true loves. That was one of your true loves. And you have like, everybody has like 5 true loves on earth. And then she's like, what do you mean? You just sent back my true love? She's like, send me back. And the therapist is so like wants to be entertained by this, so she's like, you know what, I will send you back. She's like, I'm gonna send you back. He's not gonna remember you, but if you find him within 10 days and you get him to kiss you, I will let you stay on Earth and you won't have to come back to the afterlife. And she was like, okay, bet. And so she gets sent back, and then she begins her search for this guy. And that is where I'm at, and it's just so good. Like, I really liked the concept. I think it was pretty, it kind of reminds me of like The Little Mermaid, you know, the concept with the sea witch or whatever, Ursula, and she's like, oh, you have 3 days to get him to kiss you, but you can't use your voice. Well, she has her voice, but she only has this man's name. She doesn't know where he's at, where she can find him, none of that. So she does not have anything to go by off of his first name and the fact that he lives somewhere in London. And London is so big, and Jonah can be such a common name. So that's where I'm at, and it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I'm really enjoying it a lot. So this is looking like potentially a 4.5 star for me. To 5 star, because it's just really cute. It reminds me of, like, it gives me, like, I don't know, like Ashley Poston vibes, I think, like just the way that it's written. But I really like it. Hey guys, how are you? So I am here listening to my audiobook and putting together some advent calendars for my family. I have advent calendars for both of my kids, and then I have an advent calendar for my fiance. So they're all empty. So I just have to put in the stuff that I bought for them. So hopefully everything fits in here. I bought a lot of stuff. Plus, not only that, they also got additional advent calendars. They got these advent calendars, which have like 24 days of chocolate. But I also got them like toys, and my fiance, obviously not toys, but little things that he likes as well. So I spent a pretty good amount. I spent like about $300 for everyone's advent calendars. But I think it's really fun, and I think it's going to be a nice little experience for them to open up. So that's what I'm working on while I'm listening to my audiobook. Back with a review for The Love of My Afterlife by Kirsty Greenwood. So I finished this one so fast. This book is so cute. We are following our main character Delphi, and Delphi like goes to the afterlife, right? And then she meets this guy, and the lady, her afterlife therapist, tells her like, oh yes, everybody has 5 soulmates, you just met one of them. And then Delphi asks her like, hey, give me a chance. Maybe if I can find him. She's like, okay, I'll give you the chance to find your true love if you can find him in 10 days and get him to kiss you of his own free will. Then you get to stay on Earth, okay? Because it's entertaining to her. And so she wakes up, and her neighbor saves her. Her neighbor Cooper, who she constantly is having trifles and arguments with, he wakes her up, and he's like, oh my gosh, like I thought you had passed away. And so they're constantly butting heads, but they eventually like Cooper has to ask her to fake date him because his parents think that he's like found a woman. So he's like, hey, so they start to do each other favors, like he's helping her find this guy and she's helping him with the parents, and it ends up becoming a situation, and it's just so good. It was just so cute. I have never read anything like this. This is like a light and fluffy story that very much just reminded me so much of The Good Place. It was like reading The Good Place if The Good Place was more of a rom-com. This would be it. It was so good. I really enjoyed it. I ended up rating this one a 4.25 out of 5 stars. I had a really great time. It's nothing that's like too heavy. This is definitely a lot more lighter, fluffier, a lot more of a lighter, fluffier tale story. So if you want to read something that's light-hearted, something that's very palatable, a palate cleanser in between reading things that are a little bit darker or heavy. This is like the perfect thing for that. I had such a great time. Plus I love this cover so much. So I really enjoyed this one a lot. So I realized that I didn't give an update on We Used to Live Here. I took off the dust jacket, but this is We Used to Live Here. So I am now 141 pages in, and I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I had to Google to make sure that the main character, Eve, her dog doesn't die, which spoiler alert, he does not die, because as soon as I found out that there is a dog, and he's not only a dog but like a rescue dog that's very shy, I was like, nothing better happened to this dog. Nothing better happened to this dog. So of course I had to look it up, which, alert, if you guys, you know, have a trigger to like animal harm or anything happening to dogs, there's a website called doesthedogdie.com that tells you in movies and in books apparently if the dog dies or not in the book or the movie. So I really highly recommend that source in case you're sensitive with me when it comes to doggos. So, or cats. They have cats too, because I had to look that up for A Quiet Place. Anyways, this book is so good. We are following our main character. Her name is Eve, and it's Eve and Charlie. And Eve and Charlie, they basically like to flip houses, and then they end up falling in love with one of the houses that they're flipping and end up moving in. And this house is in the middle of nowhere, like it's on top of like this really big mountain, and it's like it's winding, it's snowing one night when this family comes knocking on Eve's door, and Charlie is not home, and Charlie is not home, so it's Eve, and Eve is like pretty much a people pleaser. So this family, she opens the door and there's this family, and this husband is like, oh, you know, we live far away, I wanted to show my family my childhood home, is it okay if we come in for 15 minutes and I can just show them the house? And at first Eve is like hesitant, but she doesn't know how to say no, so she pretends to call her girlfriend, who doesn't answer, and she's like, oh, she says no. And then she sees the little girl, and the little girl gets so sad, so she's like, oh my gosh, she's like, yes, okay, 15 minutes tops. And the husband gets like so excited, and he takes his family inside and he shows them around the house. And so she shows them around the house, and eventually Charlie comes home, and the little girl, the daughter, ends up locking herself in the basement, and they can't find her, right? And then she's like, we can't just grab her, and he's like, you can't do that because she'll bite and scratch and blah blah blah. The best thing to do is to wait for her to come out. And so Eve goes downstairs to look for her in the basement, and then the dad is like, oh, like, look, I know she's right there, but Eve already sees that there's nobody there, so she doesn't understand why he's making this up. And then on top of that, he's also like standing in the middle of the basement, and then she starts calling his name, Thomas, and he just like stands there like frozen for a few seconds, and that's when she starts to think this family might be a little weird. So then Charlie comes home, they have dinner, the wife says something very disrespectful because she's like religious, and Eve is, you know, with another woman, so she starts to be like, oh, does your family accept this? And you know, like really like messed up shiznit, like you should not be disrespecting people, especially in their effing home. And so Charlie ends up kicking the whole family out. Like once the little girl comes up, they're like, okay, you need to go now. And so the family ends up going, but then they realize, they get a text message on the phone that the bridge is closed, so they have no choice but to let the family in for the night, because, you know, they're not monsters and they have children, so of course they're gonna let them sleep. So they're like, okay, you have to stay in the study. And then Eve and her girlfriend like go upstairs with the dog, and they end up finding Thomas outside, and he's like sleepwalking. And I guess he hasn't sleepwalked since he was a kid, but like now that he's like back in his childhood home, it like somehow triggers it. And then he tells him the story of like his sister who went a little bit crazy because she started to think that the house was like shifting and moving. Like there was a painting over the fireplace that she insists was never there, but even Thomas and his parents were like, no, that painting was always there. Or like, you know, like things changing, kind of like the Mandela effect. And we even get like a little, in between each chapter there's like little segments, and it's like mixed media. And this one was like talking about like, it's like an online like Reddit subreddit or something where they were talking about the Mandela effect. And so it's really interesting that they put that in there. Anyways, so Eve ends up waking up in the middle of the night, and she hears noise coming down from the basement. So she opens the basement door, and she thinks that Jenny, the little girl, went back in there. She's like, Jenny, you have to come. And she sees the little girl, and she's like, Jenny, come on, you can't be in here. And then Jenny gets up, and it's like this 6-foot tall figure, and she freaks the F out, and she like runs out, and she goes to the study, and she realizes all of the family sleeping. Jenny, the dad, everybody is there, so who is in the basement? And she tries to wake up her girlfriend. Her girlfriend's like, no, just let me go back to sleep. And then the next morning, she's like, I'll check in the next morning. And then so the next morning, Eve wakes up, and her girlfriend's like gone. And she goes downstairs, and the family's like making breakfast. And she's like, who said you can make breakfast in my house? And where's my girlfriend? And then Thomas is like, oh, she said she was gonna go out. And Eve is like, she would tell me, you know, so she's a little weird about it. So she tries to find her phone, and she can't find her phone. So she decides that she's going to go to a neighbor's house to go use their phone. And that's basically where I'm at. And it's really good. It's really intense. And you can't help but like just come up with theories like what exactly is going on? Why are they bringing up the Mandela effect? And there's different little things in the book, throughout the book, little sprinkles of stories of like, this happened, like this town suffered from a fire, and then somebody else was like, there was never a fire here. And the fact that you're getting like little sprinkles of Mandela effects, I'm like, I wonder how that's going to come into play. So it's really, really good. It's really good, and it has me like glued. I like, the pages just flew by. I read 140 pages in like one sitting. It's so easy to read, and it's such a short novel. It's like just a little over 300 pages. It's like 303 pages or 304 pages. So it's really good. This could potentially be a 5-star. I'm not even joking. You know, I don't know if I did an update for this book, but I finished it. It's We Used to Live Here by Marcus Klewer. This was so good. Okay, we are following Eve and Charlie. Okay, I think I talked a little bit about it. We're following Eve and Charlie, and they flip houses, and then they end up getting strangers that knock on their doorstep, and it's like a family, and they're like, oh, the husband's like, oh, we used to live here. Do you mind me showing my family around? And then Eve, because she's such a people pleaser, she lets them inside. And then from there, they have a hard time getting them out. And then we get this like mixed media, these mixed media chapters in between, in which you're trying to figure out what exactly that mixed media has to do with the story. But the more deeper and deeper you get into reading the story, the more you realize, oh, I understand the mixed media now. It was so good. This is a book that, like, if you like books that literally make you, like, be like, what? Like, do a double take. I can't believe that just happened. You like books that mess with your mind. You like books that play with sci-fi elements, I should say. I don't want to be specific about what sci-fi elements. It's just different things. You would like this book. This is so good. Like, the fact that they said this is Get Out meets Parasite, I feel like that's a very good concept of it. That's like, that's all you need to know. It's like Get Out meets Parasite, but also kind of like, it also kind of reminds me of Us, if you threw in Us in there, by Jordan Peele. If you also threw in Us by Jordan Peele, that's mix all those three together, and you start to vaguely get the concept of this book. It's so good. Like, the very beginning, like, it's pretty fast paced. Like, right away you're like, what is going on with these strangers? Why can't they get out of their house? And it has you hooked. Like, it has you at the edge of your seat, because you're wondering, when are these strangers going to get out? And then they start to say things that sound a little bit wacky and out of order and just a downright rude, and you're like, why are you still allowing these people inside your house? And then you get this mixed media in between that keeps you hooked, because you're like, okay, why does that relate to the story? And then you eventually start to see why, and then you can't pry your eyes away. I read the last 200 pages yesterday, because once I was like 100 pages in, or a little bit over 100 pages, that's when I was hooked, and I was like, okay, this got me. What the hell is happening? And it was just unputdownable from there on out. So good. Oh my gosh. This is definitely going to make it into one of my favorite reads of the years. It has a trope that I personally am obsessed with. I don't want to say which trope, because again, I don't want to give anything away, but I love it. And I can see why some people have complaints about the I wouldn't say the ending is exactly like ambiguous exactly, but it is a little bit more up there and up in the air and like what's gonna happen. You know what I mean? Like it's closed in a sense. It's closure in a sense where like you understand, you yourself as a reader understand what's happening, but it's ambiguous and open-ended in the sense that like we don't know what's going to happen moving forward after that because the story just ends abruptly. So I hope that makes sense. So you get closure, but you get closure on what was really happening, but not closure on what happens next. I hope that makes any sense. So I see why some people did not like that aspect. However, I like to get my mind messed with, okay? I like books that when I put them down, I'm staring at the wall and thinking about what the heck did I just read? This book, when getting towards the end, like the last 100 pages flew by so fast. Like, I was like, what is happening? I was just genuinely not like confused, but I was like, this is so weird. What the heck? Am I crazy? Is she crazy? Are you crazy? Who's crazy here? And it was so good. Unputdownable. Definitely gonna go in one of my top reads of the year. I think this might even be Incidents Around the House for me, which was another big one for me. So it's definitely going to be among my top 3 of the year for sure. I really enjoyed this one a lot. I am so glad that I like stuck with my gut and picked this one up even though I was initially not going to get it. I'm glad I did. Okay, so we reached the very end and I read a few of these books. So how did my ranking go? So at the very top, which I don't have the book with me, but I'm gonna rank Phantasma as number 1. Not only did that book like have my mouth on the floor, jaw dropping, I was obsessed with everything in it. Literally everything that I could possibly want in a book was in that book. We had romance, we had spice, we had ghosts, we had relationships with ghosts, we had necromancers, we had devils, demons, haunted houses, challenges, fight to the deaths, everything. So at the very tippy top of the list is going to be Phantasma by Kaylee Smith. And that most definitely is going to get my vote for fantasy romance because not only is it my top book of the year of 2024, but it has officially made it to like number 2 in my favorite books of all time, following Fourth Wing. It's right behind Fourth Wing. Moving on though. Besides that though, the next book, which was also a 5-star read, so it does deserve that spot in the horror section, is going to be We Used to Live Here by Marcus Klewer. This one, again, I am going to give the horror award to We Used to Live Here. I think I even liked it more than Incidents Around the House, which is also an option in the horror section. I'm gonna have to give it to this book because I think I like this one just a little bit more than Incidents Around the House, but it was still enough for me to be like, okay, yes, I prefer this one over this one. And not only that, but this is a debut novel. So, like, you go, Marcus, Mr. Klewer. Below that, I'm going to have Heartstopper. I really did enjoy that one. That one was another 5-star for me. It was a very cozy book. The 4th volume definitely had a lot more darker elements, but the 5th volume kind of picked up again. It still deals with very real issues, very real slice of life things that kids growing up face, which I really enjoyed as well, what certain relationships face in the face of like one of them going off to college. So I really did enjoy it a lot. So that one is going to be ranked there as well. So that was also a 5-star for me, but it comes in 3rd place compared to the other 2. So coming in at 4th place with a 4.25 star, 4.25. Not 4.5. Yeah, let's do 4.5 star with a 4.5 star. Okay, so not exactly a 5-star, but it wasn't a 3-star. It was a 4.5 star. It's really good. It's gonna be Love in My Afterlife by Kirsty Greenwood. So I really enjoyed this one. This was very lighthearted, fluffy, fun. I had such a great time reading this one. So this one's gonna be going in at 4th place. And then at the very bottom, with not a terrible rating, it's still a rating of 3 stars, is going to be So Thirsty by Rachel Harrison. This one was really fun. It was a really fun read. However, the characters did get a little bit annoying, and when I start to find the characters annoying, that's when I start to really just start to click off from the story. So this one ended up being a 3-star read for me, so it's going at the very bottom. However, 3 stars is still not terrible. Like, it was still palatable for sure. So that is my ranking. So I had such a great time doing this like book vlog, this reading vlog. I think I'm going to be doing it next year, probably with enough time, maybe even do a few more books, because I read a lot of really great books. So Goodreads Choice Awards, everybody seems to know what they're voting for, because so far these were great. Even though So Thirsty didn't make it to the finale, to the last round, I mean, it makes sense, because that, even for me, that was my lowest rating. The rest were so good. I had such a great time. Anyways, you guys, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it. If you haven't, please make sure that you check out part 1, the Goodreads Choice Awards. Also check out future reading vlogs that I have coming up. I have like a cozy fantasy vlog coming up, and then I have much more. I have like putting my 2025 TBR together, my TBR cart, my 2025 book, my 25 books to read in 2025, and all that jazz. So stay tuned for all of that. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!